streaming on youtube.com/JackieM. So hopefully that was just a little bit of a thing, no drama. But let's have a look on YouTube. But can you have a look on YouTube and make sure everything's going okay? Yeah. Okay, just have a look. Okay, no, I mean, as in, make sure that it's streaming on YouTube now. Okay, cool. So we're gonna make sure, so I don't have to repeat myself. Okay, let's have a look. Here we go. Stream close. Okay, stream. So it's streaming now? Okay, perfect. Okay. But when I actually go, what we're going to do, I actually pre-recorded the cooking segment so that Paul could tidy it up a little bit. Usually when I used to go live, you guys would watch me go live, and if I had to walk off to the kitchen off camera, you know, all that would be all live, right? So this time I actually pre-recorded the cooking. It's still like made like kind of like live, as in like I'm not kind of like doing funny edits to them. It's just I got Paul to, after I recorded it, I got Paul to tidy it up, like, you know, like I said, for if I walked off camera or whatever, just to trim them out. So for what it's worth, the video is actually going to be somewhat long, okay, because you're making Onde-Onde from start to finish, and I'm making actually 2 batches, so we can compare and contrast and all that. Okay, so the video is about an hour, give or take, but you know, it will hopefully give you an idea on what we discovered personally when it comes to making Onde-Onde. And also I will come back towards the end and answer any questions you have as you watch through this session. And also I forgot, we're going to share this on WhatsApp. But can you share it to the Thermomix WhatsApp group as well, that we're live? Sorry about this, guys. Anyway, so what we're going to do, we're going to actually, and by the way, if you're watching this live, say hello and let me know where you're watching from, okay, which part of the world you're in and whatever. And if you're watching a recording of it, say hello anyway, and I'll come back and say hello to you, a reply later on, okay? So thanks everyone for joining me. In case you don't know who I am, my name is Jackie M, and I basically do Malaysian food, and I've been in the game for like 30+ years in terms of like Malaysian food, okay? And I used to have a restaurant, for what it's worth. And anyway, so what we're doing here today is, like I said, Onde-Onde. They're like these little mochi balls that are coated with grated coconut. Because I'm based in Australia, I grew up in Malaysia. Because I'm based in Australia, ingredient availability is an issue, okay? If I never left Malaysia, I would do it a particular way. But because I live overseas as a Malaysian Australian, I know how it's supposed to taste in, you know, growing up in Malaysia, because I've experienced it. But I also am aware of what is available here for me to be able to replicate it. Okay, so what we're going to cover in this particular session is Onde-Onde made 2 different ways, because someone broached a question about like their Onde-Onde splitting, okay, especially after you've left it a while. Truthfully, you know, in hindsight, I don't know if I actually mentioned it, in hindsight, to me, Onde-Onde is really something you want to eat fresh, okay? It's not something you leave sitting around all day and reheat the next day, you know, it just isn't the same. But for what it's worth, basically the question was how to make them less susceptible to splitting, especially after they've been dished out and coated and whatever. Okay, so that's one question. And while I was at it, I thought it'd be fun to experiment with different types of palm sugar. And again, context, I'm based in Australia, and we don't have like, you know, the diversity of ingredients that we have in Malaysia. So we make do with what we've got here in Australia. And I remember I experienced some significant trauma when I was invited to the Crown Casino many years ago to do a cooking demo on stage to make Onde-Onde, and I gave the grocery store sponsor a list of ingredients, and I mentioned I wanted palm sugar for the Onde-Onde. And when I fronted up in front of an audience, I realized that the grocery store, even though they are actually a you know, an Asian grocery supplier, they gave me the wrong type of palm sugar. Okay, so I've always been a little bit kind of like sensitive about, like, you know, what works and what does not. Okay, so the point is, like, the light caramel colored palm sugar that you associate with Thai cooking or with Cambodian cooking, they won't work for this. Okay, we're talking about getting something that you might be able to find that's labeled from Vietnam, or more commonly from Indonesia, at least in my part of Australia anyway. And in Indonesia, they're not called gula melaka, which is what we call them in Malaysia. In Indonesia, the Indonesian brands of palm sugar would either be gula aren or gula jawa. Okay, and I've always said, look, you know, either or, and I've always used either or, whatever I can find on the shelves. Okay, but this time around I decided to get both. Okay, so, you know, we can compare and contrast the flavor of the palm sugar you know, after we've made it. Okay, so I'm going to go live now. Like I said, now I'm going to go the recorded content. Okay, so this is me, like yesterday or the day before, I can't remember now. I think it was yesterday. No, I can't remember. Anyway, so it's me pre-recorded making Onde-Onde. So here we go. Let's have a look. Guys, Jackie M here. I'm going to have a go at making some onde-onde, which is also known as klepon in Indonesia. And part of the reason why I'm doing this is because I posted a picture of some onde-onde I made for church the other day, and some people had some questions about them, and I thought I might try and address them in this particular session. And also, the other thing I wanted to actually demo for you guys, which I'm curious to find out as well, is I'm going to actually experiment using 2 different types of palm sugar. Okay, so in the past you will have heard me say that you can use, obviously living outside of Malaysia, we're not exactly spoiled for choice, right, in terms of the right type of palm sugar to use. In the past I've used, like, you know, alternately gula aren or gula jawa, right? So I've used either or, and I've used other types as well. What you don't want to use are the Thai palm sugar. Okay, so not all palm sugar mean the same thing. These 2 actually, I think they're from Indonesia. Okay, but in Indonesia, they've got gula aren and gula jawa. In Malaysia, we call them gula melaka. And also, like, in different parts of Malaysia, they have their own iterations of palm sugar as well. But for the first time, I truthfully, you know, when I eat onde-onde or when I make onde-onde, it's kind of like whatever you can get at the shops is what you go with, okay? And these in the past have worked really well for me anyway, but I decided to buy them and actually test a batch using half gula aren and the other half gula jawa, and then we can taste test with them for you and figure out how they're different. Okay, and the other point that I wanted to address is how someone was asking when I shared the photo of onde-onde was why their onde-onde tend to break up, not just in the water, because in the water it can break up, but also after you've cooked it and taken it out and rolled it in coconut, why after sitting around for a while they start leaking, right? So we're going to try and sort that out. That is not normally a problem with me, but I'm curious as well to see where we could improve on this. Okay, so what's onde-onde? Onde-onde are these basically glutinous rice flour balls. They're super simple to make because you don't need a lot of ingredients, and also you really only need, like, you know, it's just a matter of like fiddling with the dough. Okay, as far as ingredients, you should be able to get them pretty easily. You need a palm sugar, and I here in Australia, I use desiccated coconut. I just realized I've got the camera the wrong way. Desiccated coconut, okay? Fresh coconut, obviously much, much nicer, but, you know, again, you go with what you can get. And if you can, you will want to use fresh pandan extract, okay? But that is a lot of work. And even though here in Australia, you can, like, try and hunt down some fresh or even frozen pandan leaves and then, like, blend them with a bit of water and then strain them out. I actually, for my business back in the day, I used to use this pandan concentrate. Okay, it's kind of like a green hue, sort of like it's got. Yeah, it's like the difference between like, you know, using fresh and like coloring sort of thing, right? But it does have a nice slight flavoring to it anyway, so it should work okay. And finally, to differentiate between these two, and of course, glutinous rice flour. Okay, so this is a glutinous rice flour. You can pick it up pretty easily at Asian grocery stores, most places around the world. And glutinous rice flour as opposed to straight out rice flour. Okay, they're totally different things, so don't get the wrong stuff. Now, so we can tell which are which, okay, we don't mix them up. I'm going to actually do some with that are going to be green, and others I'm going to, where did I put it? Okay, this has been sitting in my pantry for years and years. I'm not quite sure where I got this from. I'm not sure if this was actually from Alex from My Blue Tea. So you might want to go to mybluetea.com.au and see if she's got this. She also has it in powder form, but this is a blue pea flour extract, okay? So like I said, it's been sitting around my pantry for a long time, so it may not be the best, but we'll see how we go anyway. Okay, so let's get started. What you want to do is the glutinous rice flour, and this is very agar-agar, okay? Let me actually get a little bowl. Now, what you want to do is have the flour with the coloring, and then you want to actually add enough water and to knead it into a dough, okay, a pliable dough. And I think part of the reason why your Onde-Onde might be susceptible to cracking up and all that is maybe you don't knead it enough, or maybe the water to flour ratio is not you know, correct. Okay, so what you want to do, you want to turn this into a dough just by adding water. And then what you want to do, you want to grate these, okay? Now, there are a number of different ways to do this. They would suggest, if you don't have like fancy appliances and whatever, they would suggest that you actually use a knife to kind of like, you know, like a Chinese chopper to grate it against a cutting board. Okay, we're not going to do that. I've got my good old Thermomixer, so I'm going to use a Thermomix to grate them. And I'm just going to cut this open for you to show you what it looks like. Okay. So for those of you who've never bought these, okay, we're going to actually, let me actually switch the camera around so you can see them. Because I have done a cooking demo many, many years ago at the Crown Casino in Melbourne, where a grocery sponsor actually arranged all the ingredients for me and they gave me the wrong palm sugar, okay? So I just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page as to what I mean by palm sugar. Here we go. Okay, so coconut sugar, gula jawa, and palm sugar, gula aren. Okay, so you can see what it looks like. Okay, this is the gula jawa and gula aren. Do they look much different? Okay, they really look more or less very, very similar. Okay, this might be a kind of like a more caramelly hue. This one, you can see they're uneven. The top one is actually a darker hue and the bottom one is caramelly like this one. Okay, so they're not even. They're not like super like standardized, okay? But like I said, you know, back in the day, I used to sell this at my restaurant. And it's actually something that my staff used to make during the quiet time, the lulls in my, you know, like between lunch and dinner when it's quiet. You know, you want to keep them working. You kind of like get them to make Onde-Onde, okay? So they just stand around a pot, rolling Onde-Onde, chatting away and stuff like that. So it's kind of like, it can be a fun activity with the kids as well. Okay, so let's cut this open. Okay, so this is gula aren, yeah? And I'm gonna chuck it in my Thermomix. Okay, you see each thing comes in 2 logs, okay? And you can see it's a little hole here. And I'm going to chuck the whole thing in the Thermomix, okay? This is going to be loud. So I'm going to blitz this. I'm going to grate this in the Thermomix at like, I can't remember now, like speed 5 or whatever. Okay, let's do this. Let's have a look. 15 seconds here. At speed 5. Okay, this is what you got. It's kind of like molasses, right? I've had people ask me, oh, can you use like brown sugar or molasses and whatever? I've never tried it. Okay, maybe I can do a different session using molasses. Let me just find something for these to go out into. Okay. Let's scrape our. And at some point when we're rolling these, I'm gonna go back and talk a little bit more about the sugar and stuff like that. Right now, I just want to get the busy work out of the way, okay? So that's the gula aren. Oh no, this is a gula jawa, right? So gula aren, we're gonna cut this open. I hope I haven't got them mixed up. But my point is that you can use either or. Like they've always worked fine for me, and I've never been so like you know, fussy about what you use. Okay, so in it goes, right? And there's other types as well. You can get like Vietnamese palm sugar, and they're just called palm sugar, and they're from Vietnam. It looks exactly the same as well. Okay, so they're not even called gula aren or gula jawa. Okay, it's just called palm sugar. Let's go. Okay, so this one I did for 15 seconds at speed 5, yeah? And this one at 17 seconds, also at speed 5, and you see there's still a little bit of a chunk there. Let's just do it a little bit more just to kind of like even it out. Okay, so now it's 25 seconds at speed 5. Just remember these, okay? Okay, voila. Just take it out. Okay, how do they look? So the color is like marginal. This is slightly lighter. I'm just put some gloves on. Here we go. Just to feel the texture a little bit. Okay, so this is quite sticky, which is what you want, right? And this one, it's also quite sticky. Okay, this one probably feels slightly less sticky, okay? So you see the two of them, okay? Can you see? When you press it down, this one's still intact. This one, when you press it down, it kind of breaks up a little bit. But we're splitting hairs here. Either of them will work, right? Okay, now onto the glutinous rice flour. Now, one technique, right, that I never did at my restaurant, but that was actually suggested by, subsequently, and also I found out in my Malaysian Street Food Academy membership, like where I have a community of people who want to learn Malaysian cooking. We share a lot of knowledge and that sort of stuff. Some of you, what you do is you take out a small portion of this and mix this with boiling water, okay? Whereas in the past, I would just use cold water in all of this, okay? So what we're going to do, because we're doing two different batches, we're going to do the green one first, okay? And we're going to add the green coloring, very agak-agak, okay? And then I've got some boiling water over here. I'm going to pour in here. I'm going to mix this up. Okay, like I said, as a heads up, this was not what I used to do at my restaurant, but we're trying to address the problem that someone mentioned about how their onde-onde would crack after sitting around for a while after it's been cooked, okay? So we want to see if this actually helps with the cracking issue, which isn't an issue that I have actually had, okay? I do have issues with onde-onde cracking in the, you know, when it's being boiled, right? You see the green coming through? But for every batch of onde-onde, there's always the odd one that actually cracks in the water, okay? So, well, my batches at least anyway. Okay. So you see this is being mixed, and what you want to do is turn this into a malleable dough. Okay, I'm just going to get a cutting board just so you can see what's going on a little bit better, because we're going to actually use the stove to start boiling some water, okay? So I've got a pot of water here. Turn it on. Okay, so the water is boiling, and this is being mixed up, and you can keep adding water to it until you can turn this into a dough. But remember, you've got this sticky amount of dough here that's been made using hot water, boiling water. We're going to chuck it in and mix it in, okay? You can see I put a fair bit of green in there. That's why the color is quite strong. But it's a personal preference thing. If you're using like pandan extract, like fresh pandan extract, right? It'll look more natural, okay? And take this off. This is actually quite sticky, okay? When it's sticky, you just add more flour. And I'm going to actually take off my gloves because you can work this better with bare hands, because otherwise it's just sticking to my gloves a lot. Here you go. So let me just get this, scrape it in. Okay, because the gloves are quite large. They have a tendency to slip off when they're trying to work this, and the dough is all sticky, okay? So here we go. Now, back in the day, when my staff used to do this, they would use coconut milk instead of water. But truth be told, the theory was that using coconut milk will stop the onde-onde from going hard, okay, after it's been sitting around for a while, okay. But that did not actually bear out for us. So they used coconut milk just out of habit, okay. I found that it didn't actually add to the flavor. It didn't like help it to stay soft. It didn't make it more tasty or anything like that. So I ended up going to using cold water, okay. And today, like I said, we're mixing a little portion of it with some boiling water. The idea being that it helps the dough to stick together better, okay. So you see, this is quite dry. We're going to need to add more water. And, you know, if you ask me how much water to flour, which everybody always asks, I never measure it, okay. I'm just kind of adding water as you see fit until you get a soft, pliable dough, okay. A bit more water. I hope you can see this, right? And if it's too sticky, just add more flour. If it's too dry, add more water, okay? That's how we always made it. We just do this instinctively in our restaurant. During the lull, this is quite sticky. Okay, this accidentally turned on. Okay. And I'm going to add more flour now, okay? So the problem with this stove is you keep accidentally pressing the buttons, causing it to turn on. Okay, this is coming around. But one thing we didn't always do, right? You learn from experience. We didn't always knead the dough enough, okay? And that's what you want to do to prevent it from splitting, okay? When you're boiling it, and also from splitting when it comes out, okay? Okay, you see this here? Turn this around, easier to work. Okay, this is coming around quite nicely. Okay, so the other thing I want to do is actually not use boiling water for the next batch that we're going to make using the blue color, okay? So you can compare and contrast if there's any difference in terms of the texture, okay? Like I said, using the hot water hack is an optional hack that some people do for other types of dumplings, okay? One of the things that we covered in my Malaysian Street Food Academy probably a year or so ago were like different types of dim sum dumplings. And this is a hack using boiling water that's used in some of the crystal skin dumplings and that sort of stuff, okay? But not for Onde-Onde. I've never used it for Onde-Onde. And then one of my students said, oh, I did used to do it for my Onde-Onde. So I was thinking, there you go, we're going to try that, okay? So knead. Okay. There you go. Okay, so it's slightly tacky. It's what you want. Okay, it's a bit hard for me to change screens because my hands are dirty and I don't really want to kind of. But I hope you can see this. Okay. Okay, let me chuck that here. And next batch, okay, I'm not going to try and wash this out because I'm lazy. And I've only got a little bit of flour here. I'm going to get a little bit more. Got to add this to our shopping list. So glutinous rice flour. A bit more here. Oops. Okay, let's see what this looks like, okay? Even if it doesn't look like a pretty blue color, which it might not, because it's so old, at least it will give us a way to differentiate it from the other batch, okay? So yeah, it looks like a gray color at the moment. It's not meant to look like that, okay? These do have a shelf life. So don't see this as a an indictment on blue pea flour products, okay? It's just that it's really, really old. Okay, I'm just going to add more water. You see it? Okay. Like I say, it looks like a gray color at the moment. Okay, I've added quite a lot in here now. You can see it's kind of gray, okay? It doesn't look blue at all, but it doesn't matter. Like I said, we're just doing this for experimental purposes so we can differentiate from the different types of palm sugar. Okay, I've made this is a smaller batch, about half the portion of the other one. But you want to do the same thing, okay? You want to just knead it until it's pliable. And if it's too sticky, add some more flour. If it's too dry, add some more water, okay? Okay, this literally looks like cement. Okay. Maybe I'll make it red. I'm going to call out Paul. Boo, can you give me a hand here? I'm going to use a different color, okay? Because I know. I'm saying it doesn't matter, but obviously I want to take nice pictures with it. I just need for you to dig around here. I've got like red, like I think saffron or whatever sort of thing, some sort of color. That's like right now I'm using my blue tea's blue extract, but this is an old batch that's been sitting in my pantry for years, okay? So, and it's not giving a nice big color. Maybe, yeah. Any color that's like residual that I can use is fine, okay? Okay, so
what's
this one?
Safflower?
Yeah, maybe safflower. Okay, we're gonna add some safflower. Safflower is yellow, right?
Well, the orange.
Okay, let's, again, this is very old, okay?
Oh, it's still hot.
Okay, the water's boiling. I'm just gonna put this on hold for the moment.
Okay.
Okay,
Hammer.
just like a little nugget. Okay. Okay, so we've added some saffron flour. Not saffron flour. Is it saffron?
Safflower.
Safflower. I don't use a lot of food coloring in my cooking, you know. That's why I'm like something.
Like what? What's this?
Yeah, I don't do fancy like colored stuff. I don't do cakes and whatever sort of thing. So food coloring is quite
Something many bakers know.
Yeah. Okay, so now it's turned into sort of like a dirty.
Ruined it.
No, you get what I mean. I'm just trying to show you the difference between the two types of onde-onde. As in, like, this one's made without the boiling water. And also it's made using, okay, we're going to try and figure out which one to use for which, okay?
I never knew safflower was beret.
It's safflower plus, look at my hand. My hand's gone yellow. Okay, so this is what this looks like now. Okay. No, I don't want to taste turmeric-y. Okay. In terms of texture, okay, so this one feels softer. Okay, this one feels like it cracks up a little bit more. But again, you could knead it some more to try and make it more pliable. You can add a hint of water to try and make it more pliable. And kneading just helps it to, you know, basically to even out the structure of the onde-onde skin, right? So it doesn't crack and whatever when you're cooking it, okay? So the more you need it, okay, I'm going to add a drop of water here. Okay, I'll put about a teaspoon here. And let's work this in, work this in. Okay, this feels a bit better. Okay. See it? Okay. Okay, now what you want to do so 2 lumps of dough, and usually if you're not using this right away, you need to cover it because it's going to go dry and hard, okay? But because we're doing this right away, remember we've got the 2 batches of sugar. What we want to do, I'm going to put some gloves on. And we're going to ball these up into marble size, or no, actually smaller than marble size balls, depending on the size of your onde-onde, okay? Back in the day when my staff used to make them, depending on who was making it, they'll make them really large, okay? Because it's like you run out of patience, you know. In Malaysia, everything is tiny, okay? But in Australia, everything is supersized. So back in the day, my staff used to make supersized onde-onde, okay? Okay, so we've got the 2 batches here, okay? And okay, but the principle is the same. Okay, you grab some and you kind of squeeze it between your fingers. Okay, so till you get like a little ball, okay? And I'm going to use that over here. Can you see it? I'll basically put it in the same thing as the yellow dough, okay? Yellow/blue dough. Yellow plus blue makes green, right? You should. I don't want it to look green. Yellow plus blue?
Yellow plus blue is green.
Yeah, it's green, right? But it won't be like pandan green. Okay, so you can actually do this, kind of like squash it together. So when people ask me whether you can do this with brown sugar or raw sugar, the fact is you're gonna have if you have a hard time squashing them, compacting them, then it wouldn't be very suitable, okay? Though obviously there are ways around it. And my Masters of Malaysian Cuisine chef, Debbie Teo, what she actually uses is palm sugar syrup. Can you imagine trying to wrap dumplings and to add syrup to it, right? So that's a very refined skill. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to attempt that. I know my place. Okay, so here you go. But yeah, this is more crumbly. The coconut sugar is more crumbly. And you know what? Truth be told, nowadays, palm sugar, whether it's gula melaka or whatever else, a lot of it has been mixed with normal cane sugar, okay, which makes it like less less soft as well, okay? So when you go and buy palm sugar, if ever you go to Malaysia, or even when you buy them at the shops here, and even in Malaysia nowadays, you know, when you buy palm sugar from the shops, you'll find that they're really hard. That means they've been actually mixed with cane sugar, okay? The super soft palm sugar, pure, like, you know, palm sugar, you should be able to actually just kind of like, you see the log here, you should be able to just kind of press it in and it will soften, okay? And if it doesn't, it most likely means that it's been it's had other stuff added to it. Okay, so again, you just kind of like press, okay? And I actually usually like a lot of sugar in my Onde-Onde, so I tend to make these a bit large, okay? But it's a personal preferences. So this one I'm using this one is easier, okay? I can feel it because it's more sticky. And, you know, if you want to try at home using molasses, not molasses, what do you call it? Demerara sugar, that's what I mean. If you want to try at home using Demerara sugar, maybe you can add a bit of water to Demerara sugar to make it like slightly sticky to allow you to be able to compress it. Because I don't really use Demerara sugar, do you, Blue? No.
No,
I don't, it doesn't feel to me like Demerara sugar would hold up to being squashed like this, okay?
yeah, I'm not sure. In South Africa, I used to use jaggery.
Jaggery. Does jaggery allow you to do what I'm doing here?
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. From Paul, jaggery is a good option, okay?
Jaggery and that other Indian sugar, I forget the name, starts with a D.
Okay, so jaggery, which you can buy at Indian grocery stores, that will work as well, okay? So if you live in a part of the world where Southeast Asian ingredients like these are hard to come by, then go to an Indian store and buy jaggery. Apparently it will work, okay? But what will not work is Thai palm sugar, which is really hard, okay? So squash, squash, squash. Okay, you can tell it's very sticky because like it's like sticking to my gloves to some extent. And this is a kind of like an exercise that would be quite messy, but that's why I wear gloves to do it, okay? So just kind of like press it in, compress it, okay? Now, some people like their Onde-Onde, when you bite into it, to have the sugar completely dissolved, okay? And you want it to be at least dissolved most of the way, okay? I do actually like it to still have some crunch in it, okay? So it's, I like biting into an Onde-Onde to be met with like some resistance, you know, some sugary resistance, yeah. Okay, but that's just me, it's up to you, okay? If you want it completely dissolved, then you just want to basically boil it for longer, okay? And also that would mean making smaller or thinner wrappers for your palm sugar balls, okay? So that they cook through, okay? So that the heat can get through to it. Okay, so yeah, usually, like I said, this is a good exercise. Like if you've got a couple of like young, you know, adolescents or teenagers at home, it's a family bonding exercise. You can do this quite easily, right? So someone can do the dough, someone can watch the dumplings when they're in the water, someone can squash these sugar balls, okay? Okay, now if you're using fresh grated coconut, you want to actually add a pinch of salt to the coconut, and then you want to steam the coconut till it's done, otherwise it will go off very easily, okay? I'm using desiccated coconut, so I skip all that. Okay, I don't even add a pinch of salt to it. I don't wet the coconut, nothing. I just coat it with like desiccated coconut. And yeah, you know, texture is slightly different, but it is what it is. Okay. Okay, that should be enough. Let me just take off my gloves. Now I'm going to actually roll the onde-onde without the glove. So the water is done. We're going to turn it back on. Okay, it's going to come to a boil. What we want to do, we want to pinch a bit of this, okay? Okay, just roll it a little bit. It's dried out a little bit in that time. Okay, like I said, you do usually want to cover it if you're not using it straight away. So you roll it, make an indent in the middle, chuck that in, and wrap it up. But make sure you seal it properly, okay? That's the other thing that you may want to consider. And by the way, you don't want it to be at the top temperature, maybe about 6, 7-ish. I'm going to put it down to 6, okay, because it is quite hot. Okay, you want to bring it up to a boil again before you chuck these in. So just make sure the seal's completely intact, right? And okay, and again, like how big or how small you want these is a personal preference thing. Like I said, back in the day, my staff used to make like larger and larger ones. They were like those Japanese mochis. Okay, even though my staff were all from Malaysia, but you know, been in Australia and all that. But when I went to Malacca, the onde-onde was the size of something like this. Okay, so the onde-onde was basically this. I mean, I'm not saying all onde-onde in Malaysia is like that, but that particular place I had it at in Malacca had onde-onde that was so small they were the size of the actual sugar lumps themselves. Okay, so again, here you go. Just seal it up. And I don't actually try and make them perfectly round, okay? Because once you boil it, they're going to kind of like be a little bit misshapen anyway. So you see how they're tacky? You can feel it? Okay, can you hear it? A bit tacky? Okay. Okay. And the more you work it, the more pliable it is, okay? So don't worry about overworking the dough before you put the sugar in, okay? Once you put the sugar in, you just want to gently seal it and whatever, but don't keep like rolling it or whatever, because you might compromise the structural integrity of the dumplings, right? And this water, I'm just going to crank this up because the lid's not on, it's taking its time boiling. Okay. Okay. So the ingredients again so far, just food coloring, all right, pandan ideally, or you can use other coloring. And by the way, there's another version of onde-onde where you actually use mashed sweet potato, mashed orange sweet potato. So that's the other thing you can do as well, right? Which is you steam some chunks of orange sweet potato, and then you mash it up, and then you add the glutinous rice flour to the mashed sweet potato until you get that same doughy texture, right? Again, very agar-agar, you know, there's no exact like measurements or anything like that, because you're going to find that different types of sweet potato and sweet potato from different regions have different starch levels, right? So some of them might be more watery and some of them might be less so, okay? So really you want to basically get them to this consistency, right? So instead of adding water, depending on how much sweet potato, then you'll end up with beautiful orange colored onde-onde, okay? Now I'm just going to cover this, bring it back to a boil. I'm losing patience with this. Okay, in here, cover. Okay. You see a little crevice. Okay, you don't want any cracks, all right? So you see when I pull this, You want that that pliability, okay, that stretchiness. Okay, again, in that goes. And you know what I find really interesting is that, like, I personally find that, like, most Western desserts, sweets and whatever, are too sweet, right? So every time I bake something from a a Western recipe or whatever, I reduce the amount of sugar by at least half, right? But when it comes to Onde-Onde, you see the amount of sugar that's going in here. Doesn't look like much, right? But I find that Aussies find palm sugar, in terms of how it like feels in their mouth, to be super, super sweet. They find it too sweet, okay? Isn't that interesting? Whereas I don't. To me, that's how it should taste, right? So, okay, here's the water. I'm going to chuck these in. I'm going to actually, what you want to do, you want to make sure that these don't sink to the bottom and stick to the bottom of the pot, okay? So you want to be a bit gentle when you put them in. Okay, I'm going to turn the heat down to 6. You don't want it too hot and you don't want it too cold, too like too limp, okay? You see this one's actually, I don't know if it's cracking or whether it's just drawing, touching the melting sugar over there. Okay, so you want these to go down and you don't want to have them stick to the bottom of the pot, okay? So just keep an eye on them. Don't vigorously stir the pot, okay, because they're very delicate. You don't want them cracking or whatever. Okay, I want to crank this back up to 7, okay, because it doesn't look like it's moving quickly enough. So if it's too hot, they will crack before they cook. If it's not hot enough, they will crack before they cook, okay? You want to strike a balance. You see this one starting to crack because I didn't seal it properly, okay? So that's going to be a foul there. So they're going to stay at the bottom of the pot, hover around there until they're cooked, at which point they'll float up, okay? And what I like to do is I don't take them out right away, okay? I kind of like push the boundaries a little bit and take them out after they've been floating for like, I don't know, 30 seconds or whatever. Because I find, especially back in the day when we used to make big giant like Onde-Onde, I would find that they would not be cooked through properly on the inside, okay? I'm not talking about the sugar because, like I said, I don't mind if the sugar is not completely dissolved. I'm talking about the skin, okay? So it's not a good time to bite into an Onde-Onde to find that the dough is still uncooked, okay? So any creases or anything like that, just pinch them. Just roll. And just make sure that the sugar is well, like not off to one side in the wrapper, okay? Because then if it's thinner on one wall or whatever, then it's more prone to breaking. Just like this. You see it? Just so do what I say, not what I do. Okay, I'm going to patch it up with a bit more dough here. Okay, and the other thing I did wrong was I kept working it until it started like breaking. I'm going to chuck this out. Okay, so that's a reject. You see the balls are starting to float up. Okay, we're getting close. Roll, 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 roll. Okay. Again, as it dries out, you're going to find that it might be more prone to breaking up. Okay. In which case, you can always rejuvenate the dough by adding more water and re-kneading it, okay? So seal, 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 okay? Flatten it. And just roll it gently, okay? Not too much pressure. You don't want what happened with the last one, okay? And Last piece of dough. Roll, 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 roll. Okay, let's put this in. Okay. Pinch, 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 pinch. Roll, 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 roll. Okay, here you go. Okay, so that's the green batch done. What we're going to do, while we're waiting for it to float up, this is the tray I'm using for the coconut, okay? So nothing needs doing if you're using desiccated coconut. You just want to line this dish with the coconut. And you see them starting to float up, they're done, okay? We're going to let them sit up there for a... Let me just actually maybe crank it up. No, never mind. Okay, so let's get on to this batch, okay? Again, this one was made without using any hot water in the dough, okay? Makes it slightly more crumbly, okay? And also we're using the sugar that's more crumbly, which is the coconut sugar, okay? Oops, but what I did here, I rolled it onto the sugar lump. Okay, so that's one reject there. Okay, so these ones, oops, that one got stuck. Okay, so these ones are ready. I'm going to take them out. And coat them. Spin. Okay, let's just use the chopsticks. You want to coat them right away so that they don't go hard or cold, okay? I don't know if you can see one of these is oozing. It was oozing out of the pot. Okay, so you will tend to get a couple of rejects here and there, okay? And this one too, okay? You see it? Okay. So we've got a couple of rejects. We're going to push them aside. I'm going to take these out. Okay. And coat them. And by the way, the color of the palm sugar can vary, right? I find the ones, I mean, here in Australia, we're not really spoiled for choice in terms of Malaysian gula melaka, right? We see maybe one brand or something like that on the shelves, and it's not necessarily my favorite because I find that it's quite hard, okay? Which again, like I say, implies to me that it's being contaminated with cane sugar. And also the color is quite pale. Okay, so see again, this one here, the texture feels different, okay? So we're gonna put this in there. Seal, 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 seal. And seal, 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 seal. Okay. And then just roll. And let's chuck it in. Okay. Now I'm going to get Paul to be our guinea pig later on to try them out and see if he can taste the difference. And for the record, the blue pea flower colouring and the safflower colouring should be flavour neutral, so they're not going to taste weird or anything like that, okay? Okay, seal, 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 seal. Let's chuck it in. Okay, these two are done. So all the green ones are done. Paul's just waiting on the sideline.
I heard my name sounded.
Okay. Okay. So, like I said, I can feel the textural difference between adding some boiling water to a small portion of the dough of the flour and mixing it in versus not doing so. Okay. Back in the day, I never did so, but I had nothing to compare it with. But now that I'm doing two batches side by side, I can tell the difference. Okay, this is more prone to cracking. So yeah, definitely do the whole boiling water to a small portion of glutinous rice flour before adding it to the rest trick. Okay, if nothing else will help you wrap these easier. Is that us? No, at all. Okay.
Oh yeah, it is.
I have to say this doesn't look the most attractive. But again, that's because I was using old expired probably stock of like natural food coloring. Okay.
I'll be pressure that off in the video.
What happened?
Pressure cooker down.
Oh. Okay. So the whole boiling water trick is a nice to have. It's not absolutely critical, okay? So if you don't have access to boiling water, you can still make onde-onde. Of course, you'd still need boiling water to be able to cook the damn things, but you know what I mean. Whoops. You see that? That was... I don't know if that was a leak or whether that was just sitting on a previous leaky portion. Seal, 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 seal. You see, whenever I press seal, you can see it cracking up a little bit. But again, you know, if you're very hardcore about this, you can add small amounts of water to rejuvenate it. Okay. I've got one last one, but I'm out of sugar here. But I've got the sugar from the other batch. Okay, I'm just gonna make it, but I'm gonna make it easy to identify. Okay. Maybe I'll make it oval shaped or something. Okay. So that we don't get confused about what sugar went into this. Let's do this. I'm going to crank up the heat a little bit so it boils a little bit faster. And in the meantime, I'm going to get a dish to serve them up so you can see what they look like when they're done. I probably need a bit more coconut, I'm not sure. Take the pretty ones out. I'll turn this back down because it's boiling a little bit too vigorously. Oh, might be, I don't know. I'm going to try this, okay? Nice, 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 nice. Okay. You see these look a bit crinkly, right? Don't worry too much about it because once they're coated with coconut, it won't matter, okay? Okay, let's take them out. See what they look like. There's the oblong one. Here you go. Let's turn this off. Toss these in. Okay, so these look like a slate color. As far as I can see, none of these ones are cracked. I mean, the sugar is a little, the coconut's a little bit tainted from the earlier batch. But just looking closely at these, are they cracked? I can't see any cracks on them, okay? What we're going to do, because the question was why were they cracking after you leave them for a while, we're going to leave some of these for a while and see if they crack, okay? And I'll report back. Okay, voila. So 2 different batches, okay? Can you see them? I'm going to call Paul over.
Bend down.
Bend down. Yeah, sit down here.
Yeah, probably work out better.
Okay. Okay. So I made it 2 different styles.
Okay.
This one is made with part of the sticky rice flour mixed with boiling water.
Okay.
And then like into a starchy mixture, and then I add it into the general dough.
That's basically the usual way.
Not at my restaurant. No,
Okay.
My restaurant we used to make it straight, just with cold water.
Okay.
Right. So this is just straight cold water, and this obviously is green because I was trying to differentiate the two. This used an old batch of blue pea flour plus safflower. But the other difference as well, we've got 2 different types of sugar. So we've got the coconut sugar and the palm sugar.
Gula aren.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the gula aren belongs to this, and coconut sugar belongs to this. Okay, can you try one of each and let me know what you think? Okay.
I'm assuming the brown ones were cooked later
Why?
because they're a lot warmer and softer. But texture-wise, I actually think they're better.
This is a little bit more chewy, right? I noticed that too.
And then the palm sugar's runnier.
This one here.
But I feel like it's too sweet. Is it too sweet or?
You're speaking like a
Sorry.
white person. I'm
Yeah.
just telling them that.
Yeah, but palm sugar is definitely sweeter than coconut sugar.
So you don't find this quite as sweet. This is the
But the sweetness is actually maybe nicer here.
you think so?
I don't know, maybe, yeah. Like it matches it. I think this is like not strong enough in its like.
Interesting.
But this might be a little overpowering if you have more than like 2 or 3.
Okay. I like the sugar in this one, personally.
Let me try it again. Maybe I got one with a bit of, like a low quantity of sugar. Okay, there is one that's a little firmer, so that's quite nice. The sugar tastes better, but it doesn't feel like strong enough or sweet enough.
Really?
Maybe it's because I had this one first, I don't know.
But really we're splitting hairs here, don't you reckon?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be as finicky as possible.
So the moral of the story is whatever sugar you can get that's brown. You'll be right, it's good enough. Okay, so either this or jaggery will work. Thai palm sugar will not work. I've never tried it with demerara sugar, so you can have a go at it, see if it turns out. But
I just can't picture it working.
Demerara sugar.
Yeah, because it's too like melty and
I don't know. Yeah. Oh. Okay. Anyway, I hope you found this useful. I'm gonna send out the notes if you're interested, and I'll catch you later. Okay, so I'm back live here. Thanks, Christine, for commenting that the green ones do stand out more. You know, I had some thought after the session to actually see if making the dough in a Thermomix would work better. And for those of you who own Thermomixes at home, I know there are a couple of recipes out there for making Onde-Onde with the Thermomix. They do vary a little bit in terms of the dough, right? My recipe for Onde-Onde is very, very simple. Just 4 ingredients. You need the coconut, you need the sticky rice flour, glutinous rice flour, you need the palm sugar, and you need the pandan or other type of like coloring or extract, right? So other recipes I had mentioned in the recording yesterday involve using like sweet potato, and I actually saw a recipe that used a combination of steamed sweet potato as well as potato, right? You mash it up and then you add the sticky rice flour to it, and I know for a fact with the steamed sweet potato, it will produce a softer dough, which is quite nice. And also the bonus is that it will make your Onde-Onde look orange, right? So you don't have to worry about coloring and whatnot. That always seems a little bit extra work for me, so I keep mine very simple when I sell mine. Now, a couple of things I did mention in the session, that the green ones, which we made using a portion of the flour, the glutinous rice flour, being like mixed with some boiling water, the texture is a lot more rubbery, okay? In fact, making it just like using cold water produced a softer texture. Now, using the Thermomix, I tried one recipe out there which didn't involve using sweet potato, and I found what happened was that, first of all, there wasn't enough water in the, you know, following the measurements, because you chuck everything in the Thermomix, right, and then you kind of like stick it in the kneading function, and there wasn't enough water and it produced like these granules, right? So when I added more water, it like literally like 1 tablespoon of water, it then turned into a sludge, right? So what I did was I scraped it out, and it was quite hard because you're going to find sticky rice flour when you add water to it. When you add too much water, it kind of like sticks to whatever you're working, you know, you're working the dough with, sort of thing. So you have to add the water gradually, right? So I actually scraped it out and kneaded it and add a bit more water, and then chucked it back into the Thermomix and let the Thermomix do the kneading after that. Essentially, after it had doughed up, I chucked it back into the Thermomix and kneaded it for 2-3 minutes, and then took it back out and then used that for Onde-Onde. And that, I think, is the best way forward. If you do have a Thermomix and you think like, because the whole idea with the dough balls cracking is because structurally the walls of the Onde-Onde, right, need to be strong enough and pliable enough so that they don't break easily in the water or even after you take them out. So the best way, like if you want to have the best of both worlds, like not having the flour get stuck in your Thermomix, like, you know, like concrete, right? And gonna like really work to get it out if you add too much water, is to actually mix it by hand first outside of the you know, Thermomix, and then turn it into a dough, and then chuck in the Thermomix and let it work really hard to knead it into a very pliable dough. So I tried that, and it felt as though the Onde-Onde that came out was even softer than the one I kneaded by hand in that recording, right? So that seems to be a good thing. You can try that if you want, okay? Otherwise, you just knead it longer by hand. The other thing I wanted to bring up, because I think at some point during the recording, I may have gotten the two types of palm sugar mixed up, but essentially I actually went away and did some research to make sure I didn't mention the wrong, like attribute the wrong batch of palm sugar to the wrong type, right? That's why if you follow me on social media, you might have seen that I actually used AI for my research, which is the difference between gula Jawa and gula aren in terms of its flavor. And ironically, AI actually pulled up a response from somebody called Jackie M about the different types of palm sugar being, like, you know, processed different. Okay, so essentially, if you want to think about it, they both work, but gula Jawa, at least the brand that I bought yesterday for that particular session, gula Jawa in that iteration felt to me probably closer to brown sugar in terms of its flavor. So it's stronger than like regular white sugar, but it's still quite like light. Whereas gula aren felt to me flavor wise to be a deeper, richer, creamier sugar flavor, if you know what I mean. More probably like demerara sugar, if that makes sense. So that was what I found. And by the way, the whole rolling the sugar into little balls is really kind of like a thing that my staff would do. But I notice a lot of people who make Onde-Onde, they don't bother. They just kind of spoon the grated sugar into the dough indents, okay, which I think is a little bit tricky. It's easier to roll them into little marbles, but it does mean an extra step, okay? So I do find that really, yeah, doing that really helpful. And it is something that, like I mentioned at the start, that you want to eat on the same day or within a few hours at most, you know, because the longer you leave it out, the harder it gets. And even if you cover it in an airtight container, I find that it still goes hard once it goes cold and it's been sitting around for a bit, okay? So it is something you want to make fresh and eat right away. But yeah, you can experiment with a couple of different types of sugar. I mentioned earlier as well, another type of sugar, palm sugar, I would buy at Asian grocery stores here in Sydney. I just labeled palm sugar, but they look the same in terms of the shape, okay? So you want log-shaped palm sugar, not those disc-shaped ones. And they're made in Vietnam, okay? These are from Vietnam and they work fine as well. So beggars can't be choosers. When I used to make Onde-Onde, whatever I could grab off the shelves, as long as they look like those log-shaped thingos, I would get them. So I never really passed the difference between the Vietnamese version and the multiple types of Indonesian versions. They all worked. But now that I've been able to compare and contrast, I can tell that gula aren has a stronger, deeper flavor, which I personally prefer, whereas gula Jawa, certainly, again, like this Jackie M said in that AI report, I think different companies may put these sugars through different processing you know, processes sort of thing. So some might come out a little bit less processed and others more so, and some might add more like cane sugar to this than others and whatever, okay? But I think the general baseline is that gula aren is like deeper, richer sort of thing, which I like. Okay, yeah, if you've got any questions at all, I tried to ask Paul to see if he could scan for any kind of comments or questions, but that's all we managed to catch. If you have any questions after this, if you're watching a recording, just tag me if you're on social media so I can address them later on, okay? And don't forget, jackiem.com.au/email is where I will be sending out the recipe for this, including the Thermomix version of it, okay? And finally, if you sign up to my email list, I have something really exciting happening in the next few weeks, okay? For those of you who've been waiting around, who've heard me talk about this Malaysian Street Food Academy, I'm finally actually ready to create, to basically restart it up, okay? But under a different concept, which is more specialized, and it's to do with hawker cooking. So if you sign up to my email list, you'll find out all about it in due course, which will not be long away at all. Okay, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks guys for tuning in. I'll catch you later, and I am going to kill off Facebook first and then YouTube.